welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about nothing, actually. We're not talking about anything. Again, we're gonna get other people to do the talking for us. Who is it? Who doth at our window? What? Today, a bunch of horror authors are going to be giving us horror book recommendations. I am so excited. I cannot wait. I'm so thankful, first of all, to all of these people and the fact that they agreed to do this, because they could have said no. And I hope that you guys go follow their social media, and I hope you guys go buy their books, because many of them have books that have come out recently, and if not, then there are books coming out this year in 2021. Please go follow them, go find out what they're writing, what they're doing, because they're all amazing writers. They're all amazing people, and they're all very, very kind for being on my channel, and I'm very, very thankful. Without further ado, without me taking up too much fucking time, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit subscribe, because we talk about spooky shit, we talk about creepy shit, we talk about horror authors, and we make them talking shit. Okay? Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. Roll the clip. Roll the clip. Roll it. Roll the clip. No, roll it. Roll the clip. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Hello, my name is Zoe Stage, and I'm the author of Baby Teeth, Wonderland, and my third novel will be coming out in August 2021, and it's called Getaway. And for some reason, I decided to dress today like I was going to get a crystal ball and read your future. I don't really know what that's about. Anyway, so the truth of the matter is, I have a really bad memory. Like, when I read a book, if you ask me what it's about within an hour, I'll be able to tell you. If you wait 4 hours, I probably won't. And then within a week, all I may remember was that I really liked it, or maybe I'll have an image, and that's it. And that's what will linger for the next 20 years. So I decided to pick the book that left the most indelible impression on me. This is a book I read 40 years ago, and it is The Long Walk by Stephen King, then writing as Richard Bachman. So I reread The Long Walk last week in anticipation of doing this video, and I have a lot of thoughts. More thoughts than I can probably put into this video. For starters, the plot, which is why I couldn't forget it, it's so simple, it's completely unforgettable. It is 100 boys, though I have to say, in my memory, I remembered it being half girls and half boys, but no, it's 100 boys. They go on a walk where there is one winner. The 99 other people die. If they fall below a pace of 4 miles an hour, they get a warning, and after 3 warnings, they get shot dead where they are. In a lot of ways, this book seems to me like it's Stephen King's version of Shirley Jackson's The Lottery. And not that it's similar in what it is, but there's something about it that's so impactful and so creepy and so terrifying and so wrong. And I always wondered, why did Stephen King publish it under a pseudonym? Because I really think it's one of his best stories. And so I looked it up because I wanted to know, and it turned out at that time, authors weren't supposed to publish more than 1 book a year, and so he needed to have another name if he wanted to publish more things. And the other thing I found out was he was planning on publishing Misery under the name Richard Bachman as well, and I consider Misery one of his other great books. The only reason it wasn't published under the name Richard Bachman was because his alias had been revealed by then. There are a couple of things that I think are really terrifying about this book, and one of them is the psychological aspect. We see the boys when they start at 100 and they end at 1, and the book is told in the present. There really aren't a lot of flashbacks, and so we really get into the psychology, you know, of the main character, but some of the other characters too, of how they change, how their thought process changes during this experience, how their bodies change, how their relationships with each other change. One of the things that the boys really have to examine about themselves is, why did they agree to do this? their initial idea of what it was going to be like, and all 100 teenage boys believing that they could be the winner, and then having to deal with this reality of watching everyone around them die. There's so much self-examination in it, and I find that aspect really interesting. And another aspect that's really very true to life is the people who watch this. I mean, it's kind of a spectator sport. What kind of people would watch boys walk themselves to death? And yet the reality is that's real. That would happen. There have been public executions for millennia, and the book is in many ways a slow, progressive, moving form of public execution. As a writer, one of the things that freaks me out about the book is thinking about how immersed Stephen King would have been in these boys' heads while he was writing about it. Their ongoing suffering and their ongoing torture, watching their bodies completely deteriorate, watching the people that they have befriended in the last few hours or the last couple of days, watching them die. He had to spend however long he spent immersed in their heads, immersed in that experience, having to think about what would happen to the human body if you couldn't stop walking ever until you died. I mean, that's freaky. I don't know how he could stay in that mindset and not freak himself out. For the sake of full disclosure, I will admit I did find a few things about the book a little bit dated. It was published in 1979, so it's probably written in 1978. And the boys very much seem to exist in a world that I would have called the 1950s, which is a little strange. The women were referred to as housewives, and the girls only existed to be lust fantasy objects for the boys. That's it. The other thing, which caught me a little off guard, the N-word was dropped twice in this book. So that's a trigger warning if anybody's going to read it. In another way, though, the book is extremely prescient. A lot of the chapters begin with a little quote from a game show. So obviously game shows existed then, but reality competition TV shows did not exist, and certainly not in the way that we have them now, where you have shows like Naked and Afraid, where people are starving themselves to death on television and risking their lives, and for what? So, when I first read this book 40 years ago, it had never occurred to me that something like The Long Walk could happen in real life, that this would be something that people would do. But I gotta say now, I think, maybe it would happen. The truth of the matter is there probably would be 100 teenagers willing to risk their lives for some incredible prize, life riches. Every one of them probably would think that they would win. And people probably would watch it. And both of those aspects, I think, add a very contemporary kind of horror to the story, that this could happen now. If human beings are evolving, are we evolving in a better direction? I don't know.
Hey everybody, my name is Clay Mcleod Chapman, and I am the author of The Remaking, most recently a new novel which actually just came out called Whisper Down the Lane. But I'm not here to talk about those books. No, I'm here to talk about a book that really scared me and really messed me up. For the assignment, I decided to pick none other than Naomi Booth's Sealed. And if you haven't heard of this book, I highly recommend it. I feel like there are those novels that, you read them, and not only does it affect you on a level of kind of bringing out your fear impulse, petrifying you, suddenly the kind of the actual experience of reading the book is kind of ingrained in the novel as well. I can tell you exactly where I was when I read this book. This novel came out in 2017. I think I read it in 2018, and I was in Los Angeles. I read it over the course of this business trip, but I have a distinct memory of reading this book while I was in my rental car in a Starbucks parking lot, kind of waiting in between meetings or whatever, having some time to kill. So I basically read this book, and it sucked me in so much that I actually lost track of time and was late to my business meeting. If that's not a recommendation, I don't know what is. This book is horrifying. It is a slow burning body horror. I don't want to give away too much, but what I will say about it is there is a new epidemic that people are dealing with, and it is probably, without a doubt, one of the most just terrifying thoughts I've ever kind of encountered in a book. It's one of those kind of mimetic impulses where, like, now that I've read this book, I can't stop thinking about it, and I kind of have cast myself in the position of what would happen to me if I caught this particular affliction. It is gross, but more than that, more than the kind of visceral quality of the book itself, there is something so slow, the way in which this particular plague affects the people who have gotten it. It's just so intense. It's leaving me kind of speechless. If Paul Tremblay isn't enough to kind of make a recommendation for this, let me humbly say, this is a book you need to read, but please don't read it alone. This book will really stick with you for a long time. It definitely did for me. So yeah, that is Sealed by Naomi Booth. The only other thing I want to say is you can find me on Instagram, on Twitter. I'm out there in the virtual world as we know it these days. And if you're looking for something spooky to read after you read Sealed, you should totally check out Whisper Down the Lane. Thanks so much for having me. Good luck with the nightmares, guys. This one's a doozy.
Hi friends, V.Castro here. You can call me Violet, author of, my most recent release, Goddess of Filth from Creature Publishing. But we are here to discuss other authors. So I want to bring your attention to Linda Addison. She is a friend, but also an important Black voice in horror today, doing lots of good stuff with the Horror Writers Association. But this is a great one, How to Recognize a Demon Has Become Your Friend. So it's a quick read. I mean, I was so immersed, I read it, in one sitting. But it's horror poetry and prose, but all of it is poetry. She's just fantastic. Brings you into her world. She gives you a different perspective in horror, which I like. She has a short story in a new book, which it's Black Panther Tales from Wakanda. So if you are a Black Panther fan, definitely check that out. Lots of cool names included. But yeah, keep an eye out for Linda Addison and follow her on Twitter. I also want to bring your attention to Haley Piper, The Worm and His Kings. Now, kings, plural. So I will say this is a TBR book. I have unfortunately not read it yet. I'm so behind, but I did read her other book, The Possession of Natalie Glasgow, which I loved. Talk about possession, like taking it where you would not even think of taking it. So I loved that, but this is a recent release from Off Limits Press, and I like Off Limits Press because it is owned by a woman. You should all follow her, Samantha Kolsnick. She's also a writer. So lots of good things coming out of Off Limits Press, and so much from Haley Piper. So she should definitely be on your radar. Yeah, those are definitely pick up two writers you should look up. I'll be reading this soon because that's not. Thank you for listening to this short video. Again, Violet Castro, V.Castro. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at VLatina London. One word, quite easy. Yeah, I hope you're having an amazing day. Stay horror.
Hello, I'm Adam Millard, author of The October Boys, The Susceptibles and Larry. And I'm here to share with you two books which have made a huge impact on both my life and my career. So without further ado, my first book is The Stand, a novel I read at least once a year, and one which is it's rather apt at the moment. This book has everything. It's the ultimate tale of good versus evil, and it's the first time we get to meet one of the greatest antagonists created, Randall Flagg. Flagg went on to appear in at least 8 of other King's books. Eyes of the Dragon, Heart at Atlantis, Wendy's Button Box, which was co-written by Richard Chismar. The unabridged version of this book is so wonderful, it's hard to believe. It's almost 50 years old. And in the world we're currently living in, it couldn't be more relevant. Captain Trips is a virus which takes out most of the world's population, and everybody's split into 2 factions. It's either pit the good, pit the bad. Mother Abigail or Randall Flagg. You have to choose to decide which one you think would be best to join if you want to survive. I can't say enough about this book. This book, to me, growing up, was the most amazing thing in the world. It was, and I read it every single day to this day. If you enjoy that, then also Swan Song by Robert McCammon, The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Yeah, so that's my first book. The second book that I'm going to choose, which inspired me so much, is The Colour of Magic by Terry Pratchett. Now, I could pick any one of the 41 Discworld novels and start at the beginning. What makes him so accessible is you can jump in at any point. You know, you don't have to start at book 1, you don't have to start at book 25, whatever. They've all got their own sort of stories, so that's what makes Pratchett's work so amazing, you know. He's inspired me to write, if anybody's read any of my stuff, humorous horror or humorous fantasy, you know. And it's all come from Terry Pratchett. It's come from Robert Rankin or Tom Holt, Douglas Adams, you know. These are the people that have inspired me, so I could reread it, get to the end, and then start again. And that's the same with The Stand by Stephen King. I could read it, finish it, give it a couple of months, and then read it again. That's when you know that you've found, you know, a book that you really, really enjoy over and over. So I want to thank Jordaline for inviting me to do this, to take part anyway, and you can find me at on all the usual Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and also adam-millard.com. But yeah, thank you. Bye.
Hello, my name is Rachel Harrison and I am the author of The Return. And I'm super excited that Jordaline asked me to talk about one of my favorite scary reads. And while choosing favorites is always hard for me, today I want to take the opportunity to highlight this little gem, Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. And first of all, just like look at this cover. Look at it. It's a beautiful cover. And this book is very, very, very unsettling. It's an extremely visceral, sensory read. There's nothing supernatural about it, which I think is why it really crept under my skin and stuck with me, because it's grounded in reality. So Ghost Wall is set in the remote countryside of northern England, and it's the story of Sylvie, who's a teenage girl on vacation with her parents. And her father has an unhealthy obsession with the Iron Age, how everyone lived way back when. So his idea of vacation is tagging along with a group of experimental archaeology students while they live like ancient Britons for 2 weeks. So it's like camping, but worse. Like no equipment, no modern things, no like matches, just like sleeping on the ground, eating berries off bushes, camping, which is my idea of horror. But some people enjoy it, each their own. The novel is short, but extremely tense, and it opens up with just this like horrifying, surreal scene that sort of like casts the shadow of impending doom over the rest of the book. So you're turning each page just like, when's the other shoe gonna drop? It's extremely, extremely tense. And another thing that really struck me about Ghost Wall is the setting. It's very, very effective Like when you're reading it, you can feel the sun on your shoulders. You're just completely transported. It's just a very, very eerie, deeply unsettling book that's haunted me ever since I read it. Like, it sticks with you. I think it kind of like sneaks up on you. Even after you're done reading it, you'll get like waves of just like being completely like disquieted long after you finish it. So highly recommend Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. And if you read it or do read it and enjoy it, I would also recommend The Vegetarian by Hun Kang and Catherine House by Lizzie Thomas, which are two other very like visceral, dread-inducing books. I'd say they're all horror adjacent, just to note so you don't go in expecting a slasher. So yeah, I snuck in two more. But if you've read all these and enjoy them and are looking for more recs, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram. I'm always raving about books there. And I have a new book coming out on October 5th called Cackle. Check it out. And I want to thank Jordaline again for asking me to do this. Super fun, and she's a true horror queen, so shout out to Jordaline. And shout out to you. Thank you for watching.
Hey everyone, I'm Sergio Gomez. I'm the author of Camp Slaughter and The Visitor. Before I begin, I want to thank Jordaline for inviting me to do this. I know she puts a ton of work into her content, and it's been fun to see her grow over the past like year and a half or so and become a YouTube sensation. But yeah, thank you, Jordaline. Thanks for inviting me to do this. Yeah, let's get into it. The book I want to recommend today is Hairspray and Switchblades by V.Castro. The book is about a woman named Maya who is an exotic dancer and comes from a lineage of shapeshifters that can transform into jaguars. Maya and her sister lose their parents to a home invasion, which forces Maya to like start dancing at this seedy strip club to help support her sister and get her through college. So Maya gets involved into like the criminal underworld of San Antonio, Texas. There is a serial killer on the loose called the San Antonio Stripper Ripper. As it turns out, the San Antonio Stripper Ripper is a witch who is looking for a very specific type of blood, and as you might guess, the specific type of blood she's looking for is the blood of a jaguar, of a shape-shifting jaguar. That's where the tension of the story begins. But my favorite thing about the book, it's a 133-page long novella. But my favorite thing about it was how well the world was built, how well V.Castro built this world. She did a lot with what she had to work with. Because it takes place in like the criminal underworld of San Antonio, Texas, but layered underneath that criminal world was this extra layer of like where the supernatural beings existed. Like Maya, for example, the main character, who shapeshifts, and then the Weaver exists in that world, and then there were other like people with like powers and stuff. But yeah, it was just very interesting. The book has this like noirish feel to it, and there's also, from like the witch's perspective, we also get like a ton of like magic type things. Like we see the Weaver, who's the main villain, the Weaver doing spells. She's using like human hair, and like she has these like dolls made out of like skin and stuff. All these like magical elements to it. But that's not to say that this isn't a horror book. V.Castro took elements from crime. She took elements from like the dark magic genre, and then blended that all in together and made this very fun, action-packed 133-page novella. It's very much a horror book. There's tons of like bloodshed. There's tons of like scenes with the jaguars, obviously like ripping people apart. There's people getting their faces ripped off. There's the transformation scene when we first see Maya become a jaguar. The way V.Castro described that was very much in a horror style. She describes like how she feels her muscles getting pulled apart, and like she hears her bones cracking. She feels like the pain of her body going from this like bipedal skeleton to like a four-legged beast, and it was just really cool. I've never seen that done in a shape-shifting type thing where you actually see, like, where you actually feel, like, the pain of the character as they're transforming. That's in the beginning of the book. That's like chapter 1, I believe. So that really sets the tone. But then, like I mentioned before, there's that criminal noir type thing. I thought added a really fun element to the story. I feel like you're, like, in the criminal world, and then there's, like, magic too, and it was just done very masterfully. I love the story. It's very raunchy as well. There's a lot of, like, sex scenes and that kind of stuff, which V.Castro is known for. If you've read her other stuff, you know she does that a lot. Yeah, that's my recommendation. It's V.Castro's Hairspray and Switchblades. I hope you'll check it out. I hope you'll subscribe to Jordaline's channel if you're not already, because she talks about spooky shit. I forget the rest of her catchphrase, and she does it better anyway. Yeah, thanks again, Jordaline, for inviting me to do this. It was a lot of fun.
Hi, I'm Joe Quenell. I'm the author of the novella The Mud Ballad, as well as several short stories that have been featured in anthologies such as Teenage Grave, Beautiful Grotesque, and Bleak Friday. I am going to be talking about one of my favorite horror collections today, North American Lake Monsters by Nathan Ballinger. I first read this collection about 6 years ago. It was during a time when I was reading pretty much extensively extreme horror. And that was kind of what drew me to horror, was writers like Jack Ketchum or Edward Lee, and writers that would predominantly be throwing gore around the page a lot. I still love that stuff, but this book really helped me expand what I considered horror. Nathan Ballinger gets compared a lot to Raymond Carver meeting Ray Bradbury. And I think that that's a pretty apt description of what the stories in these read like. A lot of them are very character driven, while they still hit tropes that we see in a lot of horror fiction, such as vampires or werewolves. The horror sometimes falls behind these character studies that really remind me a lot of especially Carver's Cathedral. But at the same time, there's kind of this feeling in these stories that sometimes gives me the same mood that you might see on Tales from the Crypt episodes, except these are a lot more dark and will often leave you feeling more depressed at the end. One of the things that really struck me about this book when I read it was that when Ballinger does decide to throw in violence, and he definitely does, there are some pretty brutal moments in these stories. He really differed from extreme writers where he really placed it. He was very specific about the points he placed it, would keep from getting too gratuitous, but just to show enough to where it really punched you. All the stories in this are amazing, but there are 3 in particular that really stick out to me, and those include Wild Acre and Monsters of Heaven and Sunbleached. Wild Acre is a werewolf story, but it's unlike anything that I think I've ever read. It happens predominantly after a werewolf attack. Discusses the PTSD of the lone survivor. Unconventional for the genre, but it works so well. In the end, has an impact that just left me feeling empty when I first read it. It does something that's really fits well, and is kind of a common occurrence in a lot of these stories, is that it's a reflection on toxic masculinity, specifically how masculinity shows up through broken men and their actions. I think that every story in this covers that a little bit. Wild Acre is one where that really jumps out and hits hard. The story Monsters of Heaven, I feel, is probably the closest that it gets to a splatter story in this collection. And once again, the ending just hits very hard. It involves angels that are coming to Earth. The way people react to them is pretty chilling. Once again, that's just the horror that kind of hangs out in the background, where we're left with this really amazing character study. The story that sticks out the most to me, and it's the one that I didn't expect to hit so hard, is Sunbleached. And Sunbleached is a vampire story. The end made it feel like my mind broke a little bit. The last 2 pages in the story has what I think is one of the most shocking images that I think I've seen in a story. And it's one that just years later I think back to all the time. I don't want to talk too much about it because I want people to read this collection and go into most of these stories blind. Anywho, that is it. This is my recommendation, North American Lake Monsters by Nathan Ballinger. And again, I am Joe Quenell. You can find me on Instagram at joe.quenell. That's Quenell. Take care.
Hello everyone, my name's Todd Keisling. I'm a writer of horror and weird fiction. Most recently, you might have heard of me because of this book right here. This is my novel Devil's Creek. It was just nominated for a Bram Stoker Award in the category of Superior Achievement in a novel. So, Scanlines, my novella, that's due out in May from Perpetual Motion Publishing, or Perpetual Motion Machine Publishing. It's a bit of a tongue twister. Also, my Monochrome trilogy, which is being re-released through Bloodshot Books. The first book, A Life Transparent, the next book comes out June 1st. Jordaline was nice enough to invite me onto this and participate to talk about a book that is my favorite horror book, or a book that really, just messed me up when I read it. I'm going to cheat a little bit. This book that I'm going to be talking about is The Great and Secret Show by Clive Barker. It is a horror novel. It is a fantasy novel. It is in a way you could argue that it's also partially a sci-fi novel. It's a romance novel. It's a little bit of everything, and that's one of the things I love so much about it. But I mean, this is Clive Barker we're talking about, so there are some things in it that are really messed up, really dark. What is The Great and Secret Show? It's the first part of a trilogy that Barker has yet to finish. He calls it the Books of the Art. There's actually an epigraph at the very beginning that explains what the art is, and the book reinforces this. I'll read it to you. Memory, prophecy, and fantasy. The past, the future, and the dreaming moment between are all one country, living one immortal day. To know that is wisdom. To use it is the art. I realize that's really broad and vague and doesn't give you much to go on, so I'll give you a little bit more. The book starts in what they call a dead letter office. It's where all the undeliverable mail ends up. You are introduced to a man by the name of Randolph Jaffe. He is ambitious, he has a purpose, but he isn't sure what. And as he's sifting through all the mail in the dead letter office, he finds, over the course of time, finds references to this thing. It's not named, but people are talking about this undescribable feeling or place. He begins to piece together the references to this until he finds an amulet in one of the letters. He basically sets out on a journey to discover this unspoken thing some people are kind of discussing amongst themselves in these letters. Long story short, there's this place called Quiddity. It's what they call the Dream Sea. It's a place that mankind only visits 3 times in their lives. Once when we're born, once when we sleep beside our one true love, and once before we die. Jaffe wants Quiddity all to himself. He is essentially our bad guy. Jaffe hires a man by the name of Fletcher, a scientist, who develops a chemical that's going to allow Jaffe to pierce our reality and step into Quiddity. Fletcher doesn't want that to happen. He wants to preserve Quiddity, keep Jaffe out of it. He doesn't want it to be tainted. He realizes that we need our time in Quiddity to function as a species. He wants to stop Jaffe from, perverting that. You're probably thinking, well, where's the horror in this? And trust me, it's coming. This is basically all just a setup in the first 50 pages. It's not really a spoiler. Some things happen to Jaffe and Fletcher in this struggle to prevent Jaffe from, using the chemical, the nuncio, the messenger, as they call it, to stop him from getting into Quiddity. So this sets up this grand cosmic scale. The men become demigods because of their exposure to this chemical. One good, one evil. Their war, the Great and Secret Show, is fought over America, unbeknownst to most people living there. And it all culminates in this town in California where the rest of the book plays out. Basically, it's this stalemate of forces. You're going to see in the book people's dreams manifesting in very dark ways and then used against them. You'll also see their dreams manifesting in lighter ways, used to protect them. And this is the struggle between Jaffe and Fletcher. It's a massive book. The scope of it is incredible. So there's a sequel called Everville. Personally, I don't care for Everville as much, but I do appreciate the broad universe that Barker has created. Again, the book is called The Great and Secret Show by Clive Barker. I highly recommend it. This was one of the books that kind of taught me how to tell a story and not worry about genre labels. So thank you for listening. Again, I'm Todd Keisling. You can find me on social media at Todd_Keisling on Twitter, on Instagram at Todd Keisling, all one word, and my website, www.toddkeisling.com. Thanks again.
That's the end of the video. Thank you so much to all of the authors and the time that they dedicated to this. I appreciate it so much. I'm also definitely gonna need a audio recording of all of their voices to put me to sleep, because holy fuck, if their voices are not the most relaxing things I've ever heard, I don't know what is. Anyway, I'm also extremely thankful for you and your support. It means everything to me. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found some really good recommendations. I'm thinking about doing just a whole video dedicated to me reading all of these books that were recommended and putting the recommendations to the test. Let me know what you would think about that down below. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day. Don't forget to hit subscribe, because we talk about spooky shit, we talk about creepy shit, we talk about Sergio Gomez fucking up my outro and shit. Okay. Bye.